Hi there, welcome to the Noah Presgrove case with the latest updates and new shocking developments in regard to the highway, vehicles, the theme of that, misidentifying, getting mixed up with one vehicle compared to another and how it can greatly impact the times. And once again, shine more doubt and questioning towards Kaden Pressy. That's what we're here for today. In regard to Kaden's timeline in the past, he's made reference to I think a service truck, a type of truck which stood out to him. But then there are others out there, other people that may have a similar vehicle. One named that stands out, which has come about in recent discussions, is CA, which also means Cash Alsop, if that's how you say the name properly. Cash has come up in the past on Facebook in regard to getting in trouble for installing a camera or two in the female bathroom toilet area. Seems a bit random, but that's what supposedly happened back then. How does that link to the case? Well, it doesn't really, but I guess dodgy actions, or could be interpreted as dodgy actions. What other dodgy stuff have they done? But that's just a little bit of a background there. But as for Cash, in terms of the vehicle he has used, could be mixed up by Kaden identifying it and thinking it was something else. I think it was a service truck to do with a crane, but what Cash has doesn't have one. But I guess depending on the lighting, you might not be able to see it clearly to identify whether it's got a crane or not, or from the distance, the draw distance. I'm going to be acknowledging someone's post today because it's very important with the supposed research done and some example photos as well to show you visually from the horse's mouth where it's come about in recent time. Give that credit because it is important. It is a new development. And once again, it just kind of unfortunately opens up cracks towards Kaden Pressy. So hopefully there's enough people here watching tonight. I know yesterday and the video itself was pretty dead, but that's probably just because of the title, the theme of it. There wasn't really much that could be said about it. Nothing that special, nothing that fancy. But I've got to be honest, it was just a discussion today. It's a bit more than a discussion. It's more progress in this case, if you want to interpret it that way. So for those that are watching live, make use of the live chat located on the right-hand side of the screen. And by the end of watching this video, if you've got any additional thoughts or questions, or you watching on catch up, drop your comments down below and I'll respond back at a later point. If you want to support the channel, there is a PayPal link in the comment section pinned at the top. And if you want to follow the recent videos that I've done on this case and past ones, if you've missed out, you'll find it all top right corner where the I symbol is. There is the full playlist there. So how we're going to start off today, we're going to go straight into Facebook, acknowledge it there, check some of the comments as well, because that's just as important. Kathy Bingham, the private investigator, active once again, commenting too. So that's quite interesting, these patterns and trends in recent time, with the cracks with Kaden Pressy and a little bit of Alicia, then Kathy Bingham being a bit more vocal again. We're getting these shifts in movement, in activity, and that's what's needed, a form of activity in which there is movement within the case. And we see where that goes. Once I've got through the Facebook part, I might apply it to the maps visually and give my closing thoughts on the matter. So don't go anywhere. Let's begin. Here we are. Credit to Noah's Ark for Justice page by Joyce Burgow. A very important post. They say, okay, so I have recently found out that CA, also known as Cash Alsop, drove the city truck, which is a white Dodge Ram with some toolboxes on it. BS, not to get confused with Brylan Sweat. This BS is called Brandon Sane, but previously how it was spelled, it sounded like Brandon Sarnay. It does come down to what country you're from, okay? Just want to make that very clear before people in the background get triggered over me. The volunteer firefighter, also known as VFF, showed to the scene in the fire truck. KP, Kaden Pressy, described seeing a service truck with toolboxes and a crane. If I can find out if it has a crane on it, I will post, I'll give an update. And down below there is an update. to my post. There was not a crane on the city truck which was driven by Cash Alsop. Okay. So that's interesting, that. So this was a truck that Cash drove home daily. And if it's daily, then likely he probably would have been in that specific one when coming on down to the scene. And if Kaden Pressy saw that, or saw something like that, but got mixed up, you never know. So this would be another reason why he possibly drove it to the scene. And when we check the comments, because some people are surprised and shocked and whatnot, we'll do it to all because we need to see them all very clear. Siobhan, I sure wish he would confirm if he did or did not tell Kaden and the carload of boys to leave. That would confirm that Kaden was at the scene at 6:15 to 6:20 instead of 5:15. So what Siobhan is getting at here is, I sure wish Cash revealed the situation. Because look, when you look at, who's it now? Tyler Hardy. And Tyler Hardy said, I didn't see Kaden Pressy, or I didn't tell him to leave. And Caden's like, well, I never came across Tyler Hardy. And there was that breakdown in communication or dysfunction there. Maybe, yeah. But then if Cash is present, could Cash have been wearing a high-vis jacket and told Kaden to back off? But the thing is, Kaden Pressy said whoever told him to go and he had a beard was swearing as well and a little bit verbally aggressive. Now, would Cash be like that in behaviour? I wonder. But if Cash has the keys to the answers and can reveal them to people and either back up Kaden or debunk, set the record straight, then it should be done, but it hasn't. That's yet another problem, isn't it? Because it's okay other people saying, well, Caden's probably got his times wrong. He's probably got it mixed up, made a mistake, probably the trauma speaking, it can happen. What we need is some person to have actually been there and publicly speak out and say, this was the time I was here, this was the time Kaden was here, and this was the time I told him to leave. Some people in the background could say, well, I overheard something. I saw something in the distance. I couldn't quite make it out. That's just not good enough. We need it from the horse's mouth. This should be simple, right? But look how long it's been dragged out for. Besides that, look, there's Kathy Bingham. And we'll check the previous responses. I thought BW, meaning Bub Wilcoxon, was the volunteer firefighter chief. I don't know if that's how it was worded in the past. A part of the volunteer firefighters, at least. I don't know about the chief. So, Kathy Bingham, were they told that? I wonder. Joy says, no, ma'am, he wasn't. Glad to have got that cleared up. Right. Kathy Bingham, I have a question. Was Cash a volunteer firefighter for Terrell? And if so, why was he driving a service truck, of all things? There we go. Joyce. Yes, Cash was the chief volunteer firefighter and he also worked for the city of Terrell at the time. I'm not sure why he drove that truck, but I got confirmation today that it's what he drove there to the scene. Right. So it just so happens that what Cash was driving on the day, the vehicle itself, not having a crane, but similar in appearance to what Kaden Pressy said he saw at an earlier time. And it turns out to be the same exact vehicle what Kaden saw, which turned out to be Cash, and Cash actually turned up later at around 6 in the morning onwards. For Kaden to have witnessed that, for Kaden to be only there at the highway, the scene once, would mean Kaden would have to have been there later at 6 onwards. So that's kind of like the whole point of this post. But we'll just acknowledge anything else whilst we're here. How was this confirmed? I can't put the person's name out, but said person has connection to volunteer firefighter. Generally from Jefferson County, people in Terrell know me and my family. Denise, a lot of times if they're on 24-hour call, they take the city vehicle home. I know Comanche City workers do that. Siobhan, did you not know this information about Cash? I thought it was common knowledge. I have even asked if Kaden had been shown a picture of Cash and Brandon to see if he remembers either of them, but never got an answer. And this is the thing, Siobhan, when it comes to questions, important ones, maybe directed towards Kaden, Kaden does not answer them. Now, does he not answer them because he knows what the truth is and he doesn't want to acknowledge other people because it could all backfire? Or is it legal reasons? Kathy, no, I did not know this. I was told a few things, but was not informed on this particular one. Marcy, isn't he the one charged with putting a camera in the ladies' restroom, also known as toilets, bathroom? Yes, and I think Bub Wilcoxon has bailed him out of trouble a few times. Rumour. Yes, but that was after the fact, which had no effect on what went on during September 4th. Yeah, separate events, that's true, but if you got someone that could be doing dodgy stuff, and then they're also involved at a scene, which there's been rumours in the background of dodgy things going on, like the highway footage, and I know people may roll their eyes at that now, but based off how the stories and things went in this case, and the mention of a police guy, 2 volunteer firefighters, who are those named individuals, were they caught up within it? What did they say? So just bringing it all into discussion. I don't know that as a fact either, but lots of people bail lots of other people out all the time. Just wondering. They usually won't something in return, just like a bail bondsman. Right, and this is a key one by Tim Daniel. Here is what a Dodge Ram 3500 crane truck would look like. And here is what a Dodge Ram service truck with no crane, depending on which Cash actually drove. But wow, so Kaden surely saw Cash at 6:15. I mean, this is really common sense. Okay. A crane truck. And Kaden Pressy supposedly described it as a crane truck, service truck. Will it let me get onto a full image? I think that's good enough. You see what it looks like visually, white. And wasn't that, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't that one of the key things, descriptions, white vehicle here or there? Or maybe that was to do with another description of a white car. As for the crane that's in the back, maybe on the side, I can't zoom in, I don't think. Oh no, I can. Is that the crane there, that black object? Not a big crane, but yeah. I've seen them. I don't know if I've ever had, like when I was like really young, if I had like a toy service truck vehicle with a crane in the back. There's a small chance that I might have done at some point, but I'm probably not going to have it anymore. And I believe there's some stabilizers on the back which come out. So something like this, what Kaden says he saw. And I think Kaden was saying that the service truck driver, unknown name to him at the time with a beard, told him in a high-vis jacket to leave, walk away. It was a service truck driver. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. And what that basically means is, if Kaden has misidentified, got confused with one vehicle to another, and it was actually Cash, not only does it mean the timing is off with Kaden, it pushes it later on, backing up other people more so, but then it also links to the likes of Cash possibly being the one to tell Kaden and the guys to back away. And what it could more likely do, in my opinion, is when Kaden says that Mikey was with him at the highway, that can still be true, just not at 5:27 or in between 5:20 to 5:30, because around that time Mikey was still at the house from the Snapchat post. So it'd have to be later on. It is making much more sense now. And then this one does appear, I don't know, it's more shiny. The wheels are obviously different, but that's not a major deal because you can have similar tyres and whatnot. But you see, well, there's no stabilizers on this one. I don't think there would need to be because there's no crane. Yeah. But the back end, obviously, wider, sticks out compared to the front. I'm aware of that. White as well. but you look on the contents on the inside, it's kind of like hollow, empty. There's no crane whatsoever. Now the crane, what we saw on the other one, maybe from a distance you might not see it quite well, or you might just assume it's there. If you're familiar with those type of vehicles, with this one, it's just not visible because it just isn't there. Andrea, you would also assume there's a crane if you know the vehicle. It would be the logical conclusion for Kaden Pressy. Brenda, is the fire truck Brandon drove to the scene 24? That I don't know. I'm hoping I can get answers to that. Oh, what, 24? Is that in regard to that dispatch call? My guess as well. Maybe it's Brandon who was asked to get a fire truck who showed up later and is supposedly on the dispatch audio 24 en route. Deborah, that pickup never had a crane. Okay, thank you. Who is Deborah Huddleston Laverino? Who are they? Did it have a ladder? No. Did Kaden say whether it had a ladder or what? Becca, woohoo! Great job. Joyce, as I can gather more information, I'll update posts. Tim and I were chatting, so I decided to ask someone and got the answer of the information. We all wanted to know if the vehicle the first volunteer firefighter drove could have been the service truck, and it really sounds like it, looking that way. Of course, maybe I don't know if you call it the ultimate conclusion, but an even better form of progress down the line if Cash actually spoke out publicly. Andrea, we've been screaming this, wanting to hear more. Tim Daniel, Joyce, this is huge. Confirmation that Cash drove the white service truck with toolboxes is almost exactly the truck Kaden describes. Sounds like Cash would arrive just before Jack arrives back. Right. And then Kaden describes the vehicles parked in a line opposite the side Noah was laying. So Kaden would be third and viewing the city service truck from the back left side only. You've seen it more so from the back. Would you be able to determine whether there's a crane or not? I can easily see how he mistakes this truck. I've been saying this all along, but wow, to have confirmation is great. If Cash is a stocky, bearded guy, then he has to be the person in the high-vis vest to tell Kaden to leave. I didn't realise Brandon drove separately, so Kaden would have left before Brandon arrived with the fire truck after Kaden left. This makes so much sense. I'm confident Kaden was there at 6:15 when Cash was there, not 5:21. Right? What else do we have? Wow, this is good information. I do recall Kaden describing or agree into a description and a comment. Kaden said yes, it had a toolbox on both sides and like a crane or a ladder. And that really makes a lot of sense that Brandon and Cash arrived separately. But in terms of a crane or ladder, that other person a bit further up what we saw confirmed that there was no crane, no ladder either. Yeah, the distance would be far. That's what most people are missing. Yes, Kaden at the end of the line of vehicles, then Jack's Chevy pickup, then Cash in front in the city truck and in the dark, and while you are looking at deceased body and only for 2 minutes, so your focus isn't on getting exactly makes and models of vehicles. I don't understand what you mean about distance. We're talking about the distance in which Kaden Pressy would have been from Noah, the body, according to the lineup of vehicles, and then if you add the fact that he was coming halfway across, which would be 12 feet on a particular highway, add an angle coming from the south towards the north, according to where his vehicle was, it's hard for me to accept any details he says he saw. Yeah, I think he would be like 60 feet away, so to describe the city service truck like he did makes good sense. There wasn't a second set of trucks needed, he just saw the service truck Cash was driving, very similar in the dark. Thanks for explaining, that makes sense now. And whilst, yeah, it could be dark and it could impact your vision as to what you actually really see there and what you don't see. And if it's dark, you might just assume that Noah's still wearing the black shorts as well. And you see a vehicle that looks familiar to something else, what you're used to seeing, so you assume it must be a crane service truck and not just a service truck without a crane. But this whole lighting conversation, was it Jack Newton, though, that was saying it was lighter, or some of the people when countering Kaden in the past? Are we going back to it being dark again, like how Kaden says? You know, it shouldn't be that difficult whether it's light or it's dark, right? It can be morning time, but, you know, surely you can tell easily visually whether it's light or dark. What can you see? Is it black? Is it grey? Is it light? Is it colourful? Let's head on over to the map. Just give my final additional thoughts. So I'm keeping it quite fresh with the project, pretty blank because, you know, when it comes to certain times and stamps, what I can remember in my mind, I'll apply it visually instead. So yes, party house located here, as you see, and further north, a few miles on. Roughly in this area. In the situation with Kaden Pressy. So I guess we can say there is a consensus. This is the thing, just to reiterate it once again. When it comes to this case, different party goers can talk about the same event, which means there could be a consensus in that it did happen. It's just that the time is off amongst different people. It's quite a major factor, of course, because depending when it happened, it could have a knock-on effect with other stuff that occurred at a later point or earlier on. But when you're basing it off groundwork foundations of where can we establish a form of stability, it would be with the event of Jack Newton announcing the news of Noah's death at the party house, letting people know what's gone on. As for the timing, well, it seems more likely later, past 5:15, because just of how things have come about in recent time. To be honest, the Mikey Lair Snapchat post, one of the most prominent ones, that being 5:27 a.m. Yes, at 5:15, the supposed news of when it all came about, and Jack telling everyone the original story, what Kaden had originally said and has stuck with since. But for someone like Mikey Lair to be completely oblivious based off his body language in that 5:27 post, and to be still at the house when Ken said he was at the highway, that's a major crack in the timeline, basically meaning that from the body language and behaviour of people at 5:27 in that snap, completely oblivious to the news of Noah's death, meaning it couldn't have happened at 5:15, so it must be later. That's one factor. The second factor, which is the one of today, to do with the highway. We click just about there roughly or so. Was it light? Was it dark? Kaden says it's dark. Some people on Facebook today says it's dark. But wasn't it Jack Newton that said it was light? Wasn't it that Snapchat conversation between Kaden and Jack? And Jack was saying, can you tell me the story again of the situation where it was light or dark? Come on, man, you know what the lighting was like. And then Kaden disappointed in Jack's behaviour. Remember that? The whole big deal about that. So, okay, let's say it's not 5:15. Let's say it's onwards. Right, so what? Was it, based on my memory, short term is shit, but based off what Tim says, could be around, 6:15 when Kaden showed up at the highway? I mean, depends. Like, if we push everything onwards, like the hour hand, but the minute hand remains the same. Let's just say that, supposedly. So if it's not 5:15 when it's been announced of Noah's death, then it must be 6:15. So then in terms of when Kaden supposedly came on down, 6:21? And then when told to leave, 6:30? Then 30 minutes later when Renee Milan, arrived at the party house or so? Would that be correct? At what time specifically did Cash arrive? Would have been around 6 in the morning onwards at least. I think it was about 6:18 and round about there where You had the likes of the Undersheriff Jimmy Williams, then followed by Jeremiah Wilson, the sheriff, in that order. At what time would Brandon in his fire truck have arrived? People are saying on the Facebook chat, Brandon would have arrived probably just after Kaden had left. Kaden being told to leave with the group of guys he was with, Brylan, Mikey, Isaac, going back to the party house. But at what time? And what time did Brandon arrive? Because maybe the minute hand could be off as well. You know, if, like Tim was suggesting, around 6:15 when Kaden may have showed up. Well, if we're including the minute hand, well then that 5:15 won't be a 6:15 more before that. At 6 in the morning, roughly, when Jack was at the highway, 6:05 when making the call to his father, and then was it shortly after 6:05 when heading down to the party house? Was it, I mean, just from my knowledge, at least, what I can remember, wasn't it that Jack Newton made the call to his father first and then made his way down to the party house to let people know the news and then rushed back to the scene? Is that correct? And then Kaden Pressy followed shortly afterwards. But how long would Kaden have been at the scene for then, if we're adjusting the minute hand as well? Because wasn't there like a number by someone saying, well, Kaden could have been there for about 2 minutes processing it all, not enough time to process it all and take it into mind. Well, at least from how Kaden, where it was from 5:21 to 5:30, about 9 minutes spent on scene. Are we in agreement still or not that Kaden was there for 9 minutes, or was he there for less at 6 in the morning onwards based off that? For being there for about 9 minutes, would that conflict with when Brandon arrived? For Kaden not to see Brandon, but for Brandon to arrive after, maybe? As for Cash, did Cash come across Kaden? Cash not mentioned anything. As for Tyler and Tyler H and Tyler Hardy, wasn't it Tyler Hardy that said he overheard another person telling someone that they needed to leave? Or was it Renee Millan that said she was from a distance, didn't want to get too close? Same applied to her husband and daughter, Stephanie, and Stephanie's boyfriend. But they overheard someone being told that they need to leave the scene. Did Renee say that, or did Tyler Hardy? One or the other did mention about overhearing someone being told that they needed to leave, and they were wearing a high-vis jacket, or vest, more so. If that's the case, Tyler Hardy may have not witnessed Kaden. Kaden may have not witnessed Tyler, depending where they were situated at the highway, but they may have been in the same place around the same time, but it was Cash that was the one that was in the presence of Kaden. Now, Kaden hasn't met Cash before, you're probably not going to know the person or the name, but if they've got a beard, they had a high-vis jacket, and, you know, a service truck, which Cash has, a service truck, which Kaden described seeing, and the driver telling him he needs to leave, it seems more likely to be Cash. And because Cash was there 6 in the morning onwards, maybe 6:15 or so, or roughly, then it must mean Kaden to see Cash would have to have been around that time as well, later, meaning it couldn't have been 5:15. Now, would there be any counterpoints by Kaden Pressy or anyone else, you know, in defence of Kaden? Would anyone return back to the whole highway footage, the tampering of Noah's shorts, and say, well, in that video, you can clearly see a police guy. You can also see 2 volunteer firefighters. You can see a volunteer firefighter here or there, a clothed individual, 4 people in total. Were any of them known as Cash? Were any of them known as Brandon? Could they have arrived earlier, but then also returned later? Just a suggestion to balance it out there for the different perspectives. You let me know what you think, though, in the comment section. The last thing I just wanted to acknowledge was when people were describing or questioning about, what could Cash Allsup look like? And this is really the only account I could find on Facebook. I wanted to see, was there any photos, profile pictures of them? I don't know if there was beforehand, if it's changed since. It appears to be a default profile picture, default channel art. Whether that changed with time, if the person decided to go quiet because they were being questioned in the case, who knows? But if this was the real Cash Allsup, has anyone tried reaching out to them? Is it worthwhile? Would they respond? Could this be a fake account, or is this the real account? Who knows? As for the friends section, Bub Wilcoxon, but that's the only individual. 115 friends, Bub Wilcoxon. And, this is like a public profile. Bub Wilcoxon friends with Jose or Jose Martin, which could be the name of the individual which Jan Fiorillo was falsely accusing Robbie Taylor of during that non-disclosure agreement tester on Facebook Messenger. Avery Joe Combs, also known as Avery Howard. Not Avery Howard. Avery Howard, Avery Combs. Yeah, other people refer him to as Howard. I just refer to him as Combs. Stevie Howard, yeah. And there'll be some of us 29th of February. So not that active, really, but you can see this appears to be the supposed real Bub Wilcoxon friends with supposedly the real Cash Allsup. So, has anyone tried reaching out in regard to the Kaden Pressy situation? A little heads up. All I would say is, as a disclaimer, don't be doing any vigilantism. I know maybe some Facebook groups do that more than others. But if anyone was to reach out or inquire, do it above board so it doesn't push people too far away. All in all, hopefully you found the video somewhat interesting. Be sure to let me know your reactions down below in the comments, and feel free to hit the like button and share the video so more people get to see it. The aims and purpose of this particular video was sharing on, because I know not everybody has access to Facebook pages and whatnot and through other means of technology. So yeah, we'll leave it there for now. Of course, if there's any more updates, follow-ups, then that's what I'll do. But in the moment, when looking at it, reacting to it raw myself, because that's what I tend to do, yeah, I can hear it ticking away in here as to what people are getting at, and in regards to how you can misidentify one thing to another, and then the importance behind it that, yeah, this vehicle, but it's actually belonging to that person, and that person's actually there at the scene later. So for you, Kaden, to see that person, well, it has to be later. But whilst progression's being made right now, if we can hear it from the horse's mouth and beyond after, that will just help hammer it home. But it seems like going in a certain direction, and I might as well acknowledge it right now. We can always do it at a later point as well, because I'm thinking of doing separate videos too, depending on what people refer as, like with the accident situation. Well, if it's an accident, more should have been done, or less dodginess should have been done. But I don't want to talk too much, because then I'll start explaining it too much and I need to save it for a separate video. But the importance of all this in regard to Kaden Pressy, the service truck and the actual driver behind it, crane or not, is that at a later point, to do with Cash, if it's more so with what Kaden experienced, meaning at a later time, meaning 5:15 isn't possible, meaning the 5:27 with the Mikey Lair situation and people being oblivious to what's going on because they weren't told at the time, they were told later, reinforces it there. Links back to Kaden, who mentioned about Mikey being with him at the highway, but just at a later point. So time-wise seems to be moved on. But the actual events that happened, or the descriptions of who may have been there, to some extent, there is still that consistency. It's unfortunate with Kaden Pressy, but does Kaden Pressy actually know that he's got mixed up? Does Alicia know? Do anyone know? As in, right, we'll just keep it going, this story. It's not true, but we'll keep it going because either it makes you look better, it makes you look safer, or, we can't change it now because if we do, it's in fear of causing trouble in the case, getting in trouble for saying it wrong, and if you've left like a lie for too long, it'll backfire on yourself. Is there any motives behind that? You can let me know your thoughts down below. And yeah, we'll leave it there for now because I'm sure there'll be additional thoughts which I'll follow up on at a later point because this is quite important. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.